I'm Liz Faublis, and this is Currents. Opposition to an atheist lawsuit aimed at getting an iconic cross removed from the September 11th museum. Plus, one effort to refurbish a parish here in Brooklyn.
This is the area where we'll be presenting the stone, and it'll be on a pedestal eye level. There will be a box where people can come and donate for our garden sculptures.
And we'll get the story behind the saying, all roads lead to Rome. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. It has been nearly 11 years, over a decade, since terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. The attacks included the destruction of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. On that tragic day, 2,792 individuals lost their lives. Many of us may even remember where we were and what we were doing on that fateful morning. Following the attack, firefighters, law enforcement personnel, construction workers, and volunteers continued the daunting task of searching through the destruction for survivors and those who perished. Then, one day, amid the rubble, construction workers found a steel girder joint. It was about 10 feet across and 20 feet high and weighed 10 tons. It looked like a cross. Soon after, St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church in Manhattan took ownership. It was modified and trimmed to look more like the Latin cross of Christian tradition. Well, fast forward to July 23, 2011. The World Trade Center Memorial Fund arranged to have the girder transported to the National September 11th Memorial and Museum. The cross was placed on a special mounting designed to highlight the girder set as the museum's centerpiece. Enter the American Atheists. The group filed suit against the Memorial Fund last year, asking that the 20-foot cross either be removed from the memorial and museum or plans should be made to provide equal space to memorials from other beliefs. Well, this week, the American Center for Law and Justice countered with an amicus brief urging a federal court to dismiss the lawsuit, contending that the decision to include the cross is a permissible exercise of free speech. Earlier, I spoke with Jordan Seculo, he's executive director of ACLJ, about the brief and why the firm is fighting American Atheist lawsuit. Now, Jordan, the lawsuit has been in effect for about a year, and the actual controversy for a few years, actually. Now, you filed this amicus brief. In your experience, when do you think you'll have a decision, or is that just something you can't predict?
Well, we do know that there has been a motion to dismiss filed by the Memorial and Museum, and the reason why it's taken a year to get to this point, filing a motion to dismiss, and for our amicus brief, where we represent over 190,000 Americans from all across the country who have joined in support of including the cross and standing with the City of New York, New Jersey, the Port Authority, the museum, who all are part of this lawsuit, and saying, first, thank you for fighting back, and second, we'll help fight back with you. Mm-hmm. So, first, the case got moved out of state court into federal court, and so the first issue that will come forward is whether or not the American Atheist Organization will even be able to move forward. Okay. There will be appeals. There'll be a longer process, but I think in the next in a month or maybe a couple months, maybe a couple of weeks, you'll at least get a ruling on the motion to dismiss.
All right, here's the story. We have American atheists arguing that the cross should either be removed from the museum or symbols representing all religious and non-religious groups be displayed alongside the cross. We also have David Silverman. He's the president of the organization, saying if everyone's provided equal treatment, we're going to drop our lawsuit because fair is fair. Why is this not a viable option?
It's the cross at issue here, and this is in the museum's brief, and I think why, unlike some of the atheist lawsuits that are filed, and this is not all atheists or all people who are agnostic, these are activists, this kind of goes across the line because this is not a cross that was erected there. It was not something that an artist put together or a church donated. It's the beams from the World Trade Center that resemble the cross, and it became important to the American people and to the workers, to the families. It became a symbol. It became an artifact, and that's what the museum asserts and what we assert as well. You don't get to, say, well, you can't include an artifact unless you include, basically our symbol. And that's what the atheists ask for, this giant A. Mm-hmm. And their goal, and their hope, I mean, it's sometimes laughable, but you do have to take them seriously. They file in court, they file these lawsuits, is their goal is to get everyone to say, okay, we won't include the cross. That's their hope. If you look at whenever they have victories, they're usually not actual legal victories. It's people who would rather just roll over than fight back. And thankfully, this time they picked on an organization, the Memorial and Museum, and the cities and the Port Authority who are fighting back. And that's why I think what we're going to see is the eventual outcome of this will be a win for those who support the cross's inclusion without having to put any statue anyone else wants that's not an artifact.
Right, Jordan. It is an inspirational story, the story of the cross. Not too many people can even really dispute that. And it was certainly a sanctuary amid the tragedy. But does one group of faithful really have the right to determine what does or does not constitute what's worthy of a religious memorial or historical artifact?
Well, I think what happened here is the museums also include things from the Jewish faith that were found in the rubble. And so that's, I think, the point is that when you're talking about, there's three parts of the museum. There's an introductory section about what happened on those events. It actually talks about what happened in 1993 in the first World Trade Center bombing, a historical section, and a memorial.
Okay.
This is actually in the historical section. It's not supposed to be there as a memorial to the people. It's because it's part of the history. And I think that's what, you just can't deny history. You may not like that many Americans, and the majority, see the cross as this important symbol, but the museum doesn't get to change reality. And that's reality. They have it. They still had it. And I think for them not to include it, as they said, would be ridiculous, or else have to include any other symbol that anyone wants.
And Jordan, in the time we do have left, I really do want to address this with you and get your opinion. You've been here before. Last year, New York State Supreme Justice Paul Feinman dismissing a lawsuit by a former firefighter who argued that New York City was wrong to allow the destruction of it was a 150-year-old building near Ground Zero to make way for the Islamic Center. Now, you filed a lawsuit on the firefighter's behalf. Have you appealed that ruling yet? And you call that legal argument of American atheists offensive and absurd. Now, some may ask, does it make the legal argument any less offensive because this was an Islamic center versus a cross?
You know, actually, our lawsuit there was against the city and the Planning Commission of New York and the Landmark Preservation Commission. And because if people have paid attention or read in the New York Post or any of the other New York newspapers and the reports, that project's going nowhere. We feel like we succeeded in exposing not the fact that we weren't suing the mosque, we weren't suing Muslims, we've never filed a lawsuit against another mosque in the country. It was the people behind it, and the fact that the Landmark Preservation Commission in New York really treated them differently than everybody else. And now you've got lawsuits with Con Ed. They've got so much other legal mess that we decided not to even move forward. We've actually dropped the whole case because our point was to kind of bring exposure to it, and I think nothing has changed there 2 years later because people found out that those were not good actors behind that, and they're not even paying their bills on the current building.
All right. Thank you so much, Jordan, for the clarification on that and for making the distinction. I really do appreciate that. And thank you for being with us here today. We definitely want to touch base with you on this in the future just to catch up and see exactly what comes of the brief and of the decision.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Anytime.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. A big invite for the country's most prominent cardinal. That and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. New York Archbishop Cardinal Timothy Dolan will make an appearance at the Republican National Convention next week. Cardinal Dolan has accepted Mitt Romney's invitation to give the final benediction at the convention in Tampa. Romney announced the news of the invite in an exclusive interview set to air on EWTN on Thursday. In a statement, the New York Archdiocese spokesman said Cardinal Dolan accepted the invitation after receiving approval of the local bishop where the convention is taking place, Bishop Robert Lynch of St. Petersburg. And in other news, a court has approved a Texas ban on Planned Parenthood funding. A federal court decision on Tuesday lifted an injunction intended to protect the organization from a law that bars state funds from organizations that promote abortion. Texas Governor Rick Perry, a proponent of the law, called the decision a, quote, win for Texas women, our rule of law, and our state's priority to protect life. Elsewhere in Texas, a parish is praying for the family involved in a deadly accident. Reporter Lauren Callahan has that story.
We are saddened by this event, and Acuña's family and Jaime's family, their pain is our pain, and I'm trying to strengthen the entire parish family through prayer.
A standing room only crowd gathered at St. Joseph's Catholic Church to light candles and remember the 5 children killed in Monday's wreck.
I do not know them personally, but our Marshall, the community is a very caring community. It's nothing unusual that you would see a turnout like this for something like that.
Miguel Lopez has known the Acuña and Jaimez families for 15 years. He grew up near both fathers in Mexico.
I feel sad because, especially when you lost a kid, they just try to live, and something happened like this, so it's real sad.
Father Vatenge told the crowd he never expected to be celebrating these 5 lives, and he reminded them of why they came together to mourn.
We believe our life is a precious gift from God. We believe that we are united in one faith. We are one family. We pray that these children are filled with God's mercy.
And community members say they came to show the families that they care.
We're just wanting to help in any way that we can. I mean, there's not really anything can say but to just to pray for them and then let them see our support, and that's just that's what we do here.
And that report from Lauren Callahan. Well, the accident occurred as the family was on the way to a water park. The car was reportedly overloaded. Police say the driver may be charged for negligence. Pope Benedict's trip to Lebanon is still on. The confirmation from the Pope comes despite the violence occurring in neighboring Syria, and a week after authorities foiled a plot to assassinate the head of the Maronite Catholic Church. A former government minister and a current supporter of Hezbollah was arrested and admitted to taking part in the assassination plan. While a Nigerian bishop is calling on the international community to protect religious freedom rights for Christians in his country. Archbishop Ignatius Kaigama says if Nigeria is abandoned, it will, quote, be destroyed. The Archbishop spoke at a worldwide meeting in Italy organized by the Communion and Liberation Movement. Nigeria has been the scene of repeated attacks, many on Christians, by the Islamist group Boko Haram. Well, from China, the government-approved Catholic organization is closing 2 seminaries. The Catholic Patriotic Association, which is not in communion with Rome, announced the 2 seminaries will not begin classes in September as was originally scheduled. According to reports, the decision is a form of retaliation after a newly ordained bishop announced his resignation from the Catholic Patriotic Association, which is at odds with the Vatican. Well, the Pope's teachings coming to an iPad near you. Rome Reports has those details.
The Vatican's publishing house is taking a step forward in the tech world. Most recently, it signed an agreement with Apple, allowing it to post the Pope's books in electronic format. One of the Pope's books, titled Man in Prayer, is already available in Italian and can be accessed through one's iPhone, iPad, or iPod. The electronic book is also available on iTunes. In addition to the Pope's teachings, users can also see impressive works of art that accompany the published volume.
Stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, a project of revival at a Brooklyn parish inspired by devotion to Mary.
People can come away with their own interpretation of what Mary is and what praying means to them and how God has affected their lives.
Welcome back. During his weekly general audience on Wednesday, Pope Benedict asked that the prayers of the Virgin Mary guide the faithful. Pope Benedict spoke about Mary on the feast of her queenship, a celebration that Pope Pius XII established in 1954. It happens 8 days after the Feast of the Assumption. And Mary is the inspiration behind a refurbishment effort at a church here in Brooklyn. 2 women, one a parishioner at St. Joseph Church in Prospect Heights and the other, a young lady who's not even a Catholic, have teamed up. Their aim is to give a makeover to the statues in the church's garden, which have suffered from years of being exposed to the elements.
I went to the garden of the Holy Virgin Mary, most pure.
So sad. See, here's Mary, and yeah, this
baby Jesus.
This
head.
used to be Jesus. Aww. This is limestone, and because of the acid rain, it's deteriorated over more than 50 years. And as you can see, it's really crumbling, and it's so soft from being out here in the weather.
My name is Libby Schrader, and I am a musician. I live here in Brooklyn. I was walking by here one day, and I saw this beautiful garden, and I was able to meditate here. I actually do a meditation every day. It's such a beautiful church. At the height of its popularity, there was 30,000 people coming here. Like even 50 years ago, it was huge, and it was obviously built with a lot of devotion. The church is so beautiful, and just it needs to be maintained. There's so much an emphasis on Christ being alone in the Passion and walking by himself with the cross. But in fact, according to the Gospel of John, his mother and Mary of Clopas and Mary Magdalene were there with him. He wasn't alone at the very end. He had the love of the Marys. And it's good for us to remember that gift that they gave to him. We go to yoga together on Tuesday night, and we just made friends. And I was thinking, I'd really like to replace those statues, but I don't know how much that would cost or what it would entail. I don't know anybody who carves stone. And it's just sort of clicked. I'm like, wait a second, there's a woman who does the rosary who carves statues. And I'm like, this is the person I should be talking to about the statues. And that's basically how it got started.
This little piece is about $100 right here. It's 27 pounds. But alabaster is a rare stone. Once you get this outer shell off, it's a beautiful color. This is just water, but there's enough crystallization in this stone that when it's polished with many hours of sanding, it looks like this. It's so shiny, it looks like it's wet. Until you really polish it up, the dust just looks white. I'm just gonna finish the face a little bit more, make it a little bit more real looking. But pretty much it's the way it's gonna be, and I'm just gonna shine it up. This is the area where we'll be presenting the stone, and it'll be on a pedestal eye level. There will be a box where people can come and donate for our garden sculptures. Even though it may be a statue and a Catholic religious statue, it's still an art form. It's a more surreal style so that people can come away with their own interpretation of what Mary is and what praying means to them and how God has affected their life. I could be here for 5 hours all by myself with no one else around, and it feels like 1 minute goes by. The process of sculpting is more of a meditative process for me, and the same as, saying the rosaries and praying.
Blessed art thou amongst women.
Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
The next step is that we've actually started a rosary group that's here, which I hope will add to the opening up of the garden to turn it into something beyond just the stones. There's also like an element of worship. When you say the name of Mary and think about her over and over and over, it takes over half an hour, and by the time you've done it, I feel like you can feel her presence. It just brings so much peace.
When the garden is finished, there will be 8 life-size sculptures. When other people come to the garden and see my sculptures, I hope that they will know that God is in their life. Libby's really been such a supporter. We're supporting each other's work, and it's just amazing when you have that in your friendship.
Yeah, definitely. So far, I was able to buy the one small piece of stone, which is getting it started. I mean, I don't know if I could afford to buy all of the stones, but maybe we'll see what happens. But that's sort of a commitment that I've made to this garden as a result of the gift that it gave me.
We're all aching for the blessing of the Magdalene.
Stay tuned, there's more Currents ahead. When we return, walking in the footsteps of Saints Peter and Paul. Finally tonight, it's the road traveled by some of the earliest Christians, including Saints Peter and Paul. Rome Reports has the story of the Via Appia.
The phrase, "all roads lead to Rome," came about because of the great routes that linked several different empire territories to the capital of Rome. The Via Appia is considered the world's first major highway. It was built back in 1312 BC, and despite the limits of the time, the highway linked Rome to the city of Brindisi, which led to Greece and the East. Thousands of soldiers commissioned with conquering lands have passed through here. In fact, it's the same route used by St. Peter and St. Paul when they first arrived to Rome and were welcomed by early Christians. According to tradition, this is also where Jesus appeared before St. Peter as he was facing persecution. When the apostle asked Jesus where he was going, he responded, "To Rome, to be crucified again." That gave St. Peter enough courage to go back into the city and continue his mission. He was crucified where the Basilica of St. Peter stands today.
It's a strong sense of history and peace. It's calm, it's peaceful, and just an overwhelming sense of history.
Back then, Roman law forbade burials within the city, so cemeteries, graves, and memorials were built outside, like the one belonging to Cecilia Metella. Pope Callistus I ordered the construction of the famous catacombs on Via Appia. 46 popes are buried there, along with roughly 200,000 Christians, including Saint Sebastian.
It was very strange feeling to see all these places where the Christians gathered, where they put their beloved ones and came to hide, perhaps, in times of persecutions.
The first 11 miles of this Roman road are also part of the Via Appia Park, which is a priceless heritage that boasts over 2,000 years of history.
And that is all for tonight. Coming up on Friday, a close look at the faith of the two men vying for the White House. We'll also go into the deep with Bishop DeMarcio. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faubles. We leave you tonight with one more walk along the Via Appia. Thank you for watching and have a good night.